I can't express, well, one, how grateful I am to be here with all of you, and very optimistic that there's going to be a few things that we talk about that really have an impact both on Spectrum, but also all of our respective careers and what we do. And then I also it's really amazing that leadership is willing to get everybody in the room together to talk about this and engage, because it's very easy to just say, hey, this is important, and some people over here go and figure this out. But the reality is that it's going to take everybody in this room and probably a lot of folks outside of this room to really be successful. And it's a really important time. So let's start out with, I've been thinking about the physics of the internet are really going through a change. If you think about the web and how it's functioned for the last 15 years, you have websites, and people generally find websites by going to a search engine. If it's not a search engine, it's other websites that get their traffic from a search engine. That's how the internet operates. And the way that Google would work as the monopoly in search historically was they have crawlers, spiders, bots, all the same thing. And they come to your website and they grab your content. And they take it and put it in an index. And for every 2 times that they come to your website, they would send you 1 visitor, which seems like a pretty fair exchange. I come to your website, I grab your content, and then I send you people in exchange. We all like that arrangement, but it's really good. It's the free traffic, it's the organic traffic, it's the way that things go around. Now, fast forward to today, those ratios are undergoing a dramatic, dramatic change. On the most extreme side, you've got Anthropic, Claude, down here at the bottom. 71,000 times they come to your website to send you a single visitor. ChatGPT in the middle is 1,600, and Google up at top seems actually really good, 13-1 relative to the other guys. Now these numbers are in flux and things are still figuring out, but the general idea is that the goal of an AI engine is not to go and send people other places, it's to solve problems. And that's both a challenge in a world where we've invested a lot in our web infrastructure, and that's the way that we do business, but it's also a big opportunity that we're going to talk about. So we're really in this shift where we're moving to a world where websites will play, in some cases, a much more supporting role, and the consumer is spending a lot of their time on search, and they're doing pretty much everything. Like, just quick show of hands in the room, how many people here have made a decision in their life in the last 7 days based on something AI either suggested or helped them do or advised them? Okay, anyone not have their hand go up in the room? 18 months ago, very few people had their hands up. Fast forward, it's today, and the use cases are, I mean, the cat is out of the bag, right? We humans have full trust in what they get from AI right now. Whether they should or whether they shouldn't, it doesn't matter. People are fully locked in, and it's helping you with, this is your home advisor. It's helping you plan all your travel. It's helping you with tech support. It's helping you with finding products. It's helping with parental advice and sleep coaching if you have a young child, and every single thing in between. It is really becoming our #1 greatest advisor to all things. And that is just it's a dramatic change in human behavior and how they will make decisions and be influenced. Now, on top of it, look at this from the bottoms up perspective. The way that people use search engines historically, where they type in things like this: best running shoes. The word MSV stands for monthly search volume, which basically means a lot of people all type in the same thing. So when you think about content and websites, you can have very sort of narrow hubs and silos around these individual topics, because that's what people look for. The way that people use AI search is they type in things like this. I'm 43 years old. I need running shoes. I have flat feet. They're extra wide. I can't wear Nikes. Not to mention that every time you use an AI interface, it remembers all the stuff that you put in. It has memory, right? Not just in your chat, but it has full memory on your usage of it. So all this personal information, and I asked the team who helped me put these slides together to put their own version of this in, and all of us, if we were to all go and do this, we'd all be doing something very differently. And this creates a very different type of demand. Now, the side piece to this is that this is our website, actually. You can see our traffic is going down, which in some ways is not great. But this guy up here is going up. That's like our impressions. That's how many times our brand shows up in Google. And that's a good thing. So what's actually happening is people are actually looking more, they're searching more than ever before. Because they don't actually have to go to websites and read everything, which takes a lot of time. I've been using the analogy of like, it's like you have to shoot a camera and go to the film store and develop film, for those of you who remember doing that, versus now you just take the phone out and you just shoot a little pictures, you don't even have to ever look at them again. That's kind of like how AI search is. And for us as marketers, these are all opportunities. It means more opportunities to educate and to influence the customer. Now, going back to the world of infinite prompts, everyone's looking at something different, and your content sort of grid is almost infinite as well. You have all these different types of personas. The buyer journey is much more granular. And the interesting thing is that AI actually, I'd say for the next couple of years, it doesn't have enough content. It does not have enough content. Why? Because the content that we've all built as organizations has been very narrowly focused on best running shoes, these very sort of narrow types of searches. And that's why when you see things like Reddit, has anyone heard that Reddit is like the #1 most influential site for AI? Has anyone heard that? Show of hands. So like, yeah, mostly like half the room. That is not because Reddit is the world of the greatest experts. Sometimes they have really good information, but it's because there's a lot of lack of content, and they have to provide something. We've never gone to AI and says, hey, you know what, I don't have an answer to this question. Sorry, you got to try the other AI. So whoever that the AI uses to cite, it's called a citation. That's the content source. That's actually who's influencing your customers' decisions. Because AI doesn't actually have like a wisdom source. It's not like there's like, this is the founder of OpenAI with ChatGPT. Like, there's no like fire hose from the powers of the universe. The content and the answers actually come from all of you. It comes from organizations, hospital systems, nonprofits, businesses, and it's basically using your content and your competitors' content and all the other content out there to effectively form an answer. That is what it is. And when you hear about like training and training data and training models, what is it training on? It's training on your content and the data that lives inside of your content. So let's break this down a little more tactically. This is a SERP in Google. I'm using Google as an example. They all work pretty much the same. And you can see here in this response, there's a lot of different sources and players that are coming in here. These are all citation sources. These are sources of influence for you. Now, if you look at your data, this is actual data that comes from Conductor. So Conductor, we have a platform that helps you understand how your presence is in AI. What are the citations? What's your influence? What's your mentions? What's your sentiment? It's really powerful. I'll talk a little bit about it later on. But this data comes from the product, and it's basically saying, who are the citations that influence you when people type in branded prompts? So these are when they're putting spectrum inside of the actual prompt. By the way, prompt is basically, it's the new version of a keyword. It's the phrase that people put in to get an answer. Now you can see here, spectrum is #1. It should be #1 for your own brand as the source, but only 10% of the time, right? Like, there's a lot of other guys that are filling in the blanks. This is how it's always going to be. No one company is ever going to be the universal citation source for any kind of prompt. But when we get into the rest of your ecosystem here, you can take a look at this and sort of observe some of the companies. These are all of the companies that are influencing your responses in AI. These are the companies. Like, those responses, like if you want different responses, this is what's happening here. Now, this doesn't mean that those are the only sources that are available, but in some cases, like for example, this is outstanding. Spectrum.com is the #1 citation source for this group of non-branded prompts. That's amazing. That's what you want. So there's all opportunities, because obviously the more your content can control the narrative, the better. But the point is, there's a lot of difference, and I'll show you a little later about how to activate some of this data. Now, the other thing that's really important with AI is that every persona sees something very different. If someone ever is in a meeting and they said, hey, I just typed into ChatGPT, I typed this in, I don't see us, what's going on here? Like, everybody gets a different version of that. Why do people get a different? Why do people get a different version? Who wants to get a high five? Right over here.
They're different people.
Different people, yeah, and different people have what in their browsers and in their history? Different. Yes, exactly. Different prompts, different memory, different information. So you got to think about personas, since there's no such thing as one persona. And you can see different personas have different experiences, right? They type in different types of things, they have different memories, they get different types of responses. So when we're looking at AI search data, we need to think about how personas do things. But also when we're making content and we're doing merchandising and we're doing product naming and we're thinking about marketing campaigns and even ad campaigns, you have to think about how do different types of people ask and think about these types of problems, because they're all different. Again, that puts more strain and more demand on our content, but also more opportunity. Now, it's not just about personas, the intent journey here. This actually looks pretty clean. This is pretty good. This is how often you are getting a mention and showing up for non-branded prompts through the buyer journey. And you can see here, it makes sense. Like earlier in the journey, that's like the most earliest stage. You have less presence. And generally speaking, as a strategy, as a company, you can't do everything. You can't just say, I want to take all these bars and make them like this. You got to figure out where you want to focus, right? Where you want to focus. Where's the game? Where's the winning right now? Like in our business at Conductor, we want to make sure that if someone is looking for software to do AEO and they're typing in the kinds of prompts to do that, that we show up. So we make the evaluation. We know if we make the evaluation, we're in a good spot. Where does that exist in your customer journey? And then obviously within different topics, you have different levels of performance. So this is some data of different topics that you want to do. And then obviously as a strategy, again, you can't be the best at every single thing. Where do you want to focus? Where do you want to get great at? Now, what we're trying to accomplish with AI search in general is we don't want to just show up and be mentioned. What we want is this, which is a disproportionately positive recommendation. That's something that is not like industry jargon. It's something we made up. But the point is, you want AI to say that these guys are good, and they're better than the other guys. That's ultimately what you want. And they will say that if they're conditioned to. And in order to do that, in order to figure out how to do that, well, you got to know where you stand to start. So this is something that we've worked on actually together collectively, is we have something called a prompt index. And the reason why a prompt index is important, and by the way, we have the ability, and we're working on this with Warren and the team, but if you have access to Copilot or ChatGPT or Claude at the company, which I think we have access to that here, we can pipe all this data into that, so then you can just ask questions about AI without ever logging into a piece of software and use that in what you do. That all comes from this prompt index. And the prompt index is effectively a representation of all the different ways that people search in AI. And we then go look at this data to go make decisions, right? And by the way, and as we change your strategy here and evolve your strategy, let's just say there's a new area that you want to go focus, well, we have to go update the prompts and make sure that we have good data. And basically, we take these prompts and then we go to AI, and then we come back with the results, and then you guys have access and analysis. So this is a super, super oversimplification of your results. But the point is that once you have a prompt index and you get some results, we want to start to look at where we're winning, where we're losing, where we have presence, where we have competition, what's going on, and then really decide on the strategy, right? And that's something that leadership and us collectively, we figure out what's our strategy, where we want to get good at. And then this is an oversimplification, but it is generally the essential ingredients to thinking and acting on AI search as an organization. I'll go through each one of these things. So what do we want to do on the left? Just yell it out. What do we want to do on the left? Disproportionately positive recommendation. One guy recommended. That's good. And how do we do that? What's the next thing? What controls the responses? Citations. Exactly. Okay. So citations are there to do that. And basically, there's two things that we can do categorically as an organization. We can, one, impact our content. And the way that we do that is we either make new content about stuff that we don't have anything about. We take content that we already have and we make it better. What are some ways that we can make it better? What are some ways that we can make content better that we already have? Who has some ideas? Say again? Formatting. Simon, great. Customer friendly, love that. And what would be more customer friendly? Maybe answering the questions that customers have. But do all customers have the same questions? No, different customers have different questions. So maybe when you have an FAQ on a page, you can add, that based on different personas have different types of problems. Now, when we start to think about content, yes, we want to make content that's great for people. And we should always think about the human in the process. But the machines are also coming on behalf of the humans. And we want to make sure that we have nice content for them as well. So that's what the optimizing content is. And then there's this thing called freshness, which is AI loves fresh content. So if you can't, you have to have your content. There's the content that's really important needs to stay updated. And I'm going to talk about that because that's, I think, a challenge for a lot of organizations that have a lot of process and go through a lot of steps to do this. Now, on the bottom piece, these are your citations. And there's a lot of strategy that goes in here. Again, there's no way to escape being not involved in this. Everyone has to be involved. PR, comms, social media, brands, your influence, your relationships with institutions and governments, and all of that. It all plays into this because it's all influencing your ecosystem. Now, let's start with content. Now, some things that are signals that you need to make your content, that you can actually make a piece of content. So there's some that say, well, maybe AI is just going to use third parties and not my content. That's not true. There's always an opportunity to use your own content to drive the influence. In fact, there's an opportunity to use your own content to influence what people say about your competitors, which is really cool. And I'm going to show you that in a little bit. But when you see things like Reddit, or when you see a competitor showing up in AI, as an example, when you see there's no citations or a page you already have, there's an opportunity for you to go and do something about that, which is make a piece of content. I mentioned this, but AI loves fresh content. They like to see things updated. And this is a list of the pages that are on your website that are most frequently cited by AI. So generally speaking, if you want to have like a really good strategy, is these pages right here, these are effectively the guys that sit in this basket. They got to get updated. Now, what do you update them? You don't rewrite them. You're not redoing them. But you're looking at the data and saying, OK, AI doesn't seem to be representing this. Let's add a sentence. Let's make this a little more clear. Let's add another question on that. Right? This is called content refreshing. Right? But these are the work streams. These are the 3 work streams. How much content are we creating? How much content are we improving? And then how much content are we refreshing? And this is, again, every single, like I would imagine all the people here are doing something that affects content. It's not just marketing content, it's anything. It's product pages, it's your pricing pages, it's ad copy that shows up on the web, all of this. So we're talking about content. Now, let's get into I think the real opportunity and the real challenges. This is something Bain put together, where they looked at big companies and how they make content. And the goal of this slide is not to have as many boxes as possible. But this is a lot of steps. And actually, if you look at the timelines here, it says 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week. And I would say a lot of our customers are a lot worse than this, right? They're not even getting stuff out the door in 8 weeks like this. The cool thing with AI, right, is like you can make a piece of content and you can change it. And then you can change it again, and you can change it again. And if you don't like the response or it's not there, now, so we have to work on this, right? Because if in the world where you have those 3 baskets, and let's just say you have to refresh a piece of content, those 15 pages need to get updated every 2 weeks because those are really important. This is not going to work. Now, we're also not going to say the answer to the problem is not to go and hire another room full of people to go make content. That's not the answer. And no one's doing that. It doesn't. I mean, by the way, humans are vital and part of the content process. I'm not saying anything different than that, but it's not like we just need to throw more bodies at this problem. And I'd say collectively, it's a combination of process breakdown and really getting to the root cause of where things go slower. Like, so for example, do you need the same legal process to add a sentence to a page? Then you need to make a brand new piece of content. Do you need the same security process? Do you need the same style guide process? Like all that stuff needs to get really thought about. And I think that's ultimately like for the leadership that's in the room here, that's the real opportunity is to remove some of the process here and then ultimately move into a little bit of a like, let's have a bias for action and then we can always change things, right? We can always change things. And as soon as you change it, the AI bots will come in a matter of days and everything will be back to better. So it's like, it's not the most dramatic thing to push out a piece of content that is not maybe as perfect as you want it to be, especially if you can fix it fast. So you need to use AI to make content, right, as part of it. Like this is a tool for you. And there's a lot of this, like, is AI content good? Is it bad? And I really like to reframe the conversation as, Google, like, can you make good content with Google Docs? Absolutely. Can you make bad content with Google Docs? Like, absolutely. I think AI should be thought about in a similar way. It's a tool to make something great. Now, if you want to make awful content with Google with AI, like I'll show you how to do that. You just basically go and you say, hey, make me a piece of content. And if you go and do this, it's going to blow your mind. It's going to show you, a big piece of content, and it's going to be pretty interesting. And if you take that piece of content and you throw it up on your website, like you can kiss your traffic and AI citations goodbye because it's just going to be garbage. And that's just using the base model with a very basic amateur prompt, right, going against it. But when you go out and you do a whole bunch of research and you say, I'm going to look at all the best pieces of content that exist. I'm going to look at the content that's showing up in the citations, and we're going to break this stuff down, and then we're going to come up with a really formulated strategy and all this information. And by the way, our product does all of that for you, so you don't have to worry about that. And then you put that into your prompt, you get a much different result. But there's one thing missing, right? If you have good research and good intelligence, and then you have a good prompt and you're using good AI, what's missing from that equation? Anyone have a guess? What? Data structure, definitely. What else is missing? There's something even more fundamental that's missing, like that makes it unique to you. Just a point of view. A point of view, exactly. A point of view it's wisdom. It's your information. It's your product specs. It's getting one of your subject matter experts to do a transcript and to create an artifact that is unique to you, a point of view, something differentiation. Why is this better than a competitor? Something how it works, what's different. That's so important into the process. And just a little side note, like we use a lot of AI at Conductor, and it's so powerful. But it's only powerful when you have really good artifacts, really good grounded artifacts and good data. So we spend a lot of time at Conductor just in terms of how we operate our own business. Is like we get in a room together and we say, okay, we want to figure out, we want to make content and a strategy around this topic. And we all get in the room and we record ourselves talking about like why we're better, why we're different, what we do, what we know, how we help customers. And that becomes an artifact that then we can use in this AI process here. Without the artifact, you're just going to have generic information and you're not going to get good enough content. So generally speaking, AI can do research, it can give you insights, and it can also help you speed up this process a little bit. And I know that, by the way, I know that the process that was shown before, that's just part of the problem, right? You still have the whole content supply chain, which needs work. And again, some of these steps we take advantage of in our product. And the way that our product works, everybody has a license here in the company. Everybody has access. Anybody can go put in any topic or any prompt that they want to, and it can come back with insights. What are the kinds of questions you should be answering? Who are the personas to go target? You all have access to these tools, and certainly will make it easier to get access to it. Now let's look at some examples for stuff that customers are doing with respect to content. And I just grabbed a couple examples. So this is pretty standard, right? Like we've seen buyer guides for some time. Guitar Center has been getting very, very, very focused on persona-specific buyer guides, and they're doing really well, right? And this is a good example where the response here. This is an AI overview in Google. You can see their content's actually showing up over here. They're educating it. It's really working really nicely. And this kind of stuff is helpful. Again, everything still comes back to helping customers. Just your customer is not just one persona anymore. There's different types of customers. And you have to help them in different ways. Here's another customer, which is Bass Pro Shops, and this, by the way, I'm using retail examples because I had them, but it works across B2B, all examples, and they wanted to add a lot more FAQs. So these are easy things to do, right? I mean, they need to become easy things if they're not, which is just adding FAQs. Now, when you think about FAQs, will humans scroll down and read them? Definitely. But the AI loves structured content, and it's an easy win. And again, different types of personas. I've been using this pickleball example recently. Any pickleball players in the house here? So shout out to my pickleball people. If you made a piece of content about pickleball, which is like an introduction to pickleball, and you have an FAQ, you might have a question that says, is this a dangerous game? Like, am I going to get hurt? Like, I haven't played sports in a long time. Do I need to be in really good physical fitness to do that? That's one question. And then you might have another question that say, is this a game for old people? Like, is this an old person sport? Like, do young people? No, it's not an old person sport. Actually, the best people in the world are between ages 18 and 22, right? Oh, no, actually pickleball is something for all people, right? And like, it's actually started with a lot of senior citizens, right? So these are different types of questions that can be part of the FAQ that go after different personas. AI is going to love that structuring of your content. Now, here's another example. This is Chewy. And they just added a lot of information about their products. Keep in mind, when you go back to those prompt examples where I was typing in Nike, different shoes, can't wear Nike shoes, really wide feet, rough streets. All of these things are adjectives that people might use for your products. I did one of these presentations for Louis Vuitton. When they think about a bag, it's like, it's not just small, medium, large, or what color it is, but it's like, what celebrity wore this bag? What events has this bag been featured at? Which museums have this bag here? Which ones have ecologically, different types of materials and build more sustainable? These are all ways that people look for things. And if that information doesn't live on your website, well, AI is either going to make something up or they're going to use it from someplace else. And having more details about your products and your information and your differentiation shows up. And again, this stuff shows up tremendously well. Now, I think this is going to get contentious here in a second. Of all these examples, the content that AI is most thirsty for is this kind of content, comparison content. They are the most thirsty. They are the most thirsty for this. They want to understand. First of all, let's start with humans. We go to AI and we want to compare things. We want to see which is better. Everyone wants to know which is better. The old version of this on Google was like, what's the best X? Now it's like, I want to compare. Should I do this or should I do that? And when you have a piece of content that compares, not only are you showing the difference, but you're framing it up for them. And this piece of content, this stuff gets devoured by AI. I love it. And it's amazing what kind of impact it has, and it's short-term and long-term. We work with Bayer, like Claritin versus Zyrtec. Claritin doesn't have anything. Zyrtec has the most elementary version where they just have little check boxes and they don't say anything about each other, but AI is devouring it. We have some of these in our website. You go to our homepage and you click on the first thing, you see a drop down with all of our competitors. We're really aggressive with this. You don't have to be that way. These pages can be buried somewhere on your website, but they'll be available to AI. And some of these examples, I have one that we're making, and we don't even say bad stuff necessarily about our competitor. We just take quotes from their knowledge base and put it in there. And it's from their website, and it just says with all the things they didn't do, or from a customer review. Take the negative customer reviews from your competitors, and you could say, here's what their customers have to say about that, and put a link to those pages. So these are all the kinds of ideas, but all of these, to do all of this stuff requires what? What does it require? It requires, let's go back. It requires making this better. Because if you can cycle fast, you can experiment, you can make changes. And the cool thing about being able to cycle fast, and again, this is the biggest lever, I don't think anyone should beat each other up here around being slow, but I think we should all pursue whatever it would take to make it a little faster, because once you go a little faster, then you can always just fix things afterwards. When it takes a year to do something, and if it's not perfect, then you have another year to fix it, it actually makes everything take longer. And I think that's kind of obvious why. So these are some good examples about just, again, thinking about all the opportunity that comes from this. Now let's move into this last piece here, which is the third-party citations. Now, you guys, this is all your data. So these are the websites that are not your competitors, by the way, that are having an impact on the business. You've got affiliates, you've got social, you've got editorial and institutional. And there's a lot of talk like, well, is AEO the same as SEO? And it's like yes and no. So our version of SEO was customers looking for things, give them good content and good digital experiences, and you're great. And now people are looking for more things in more ways, and you need to give them more dimensions. All that's true. But this is a new thing, which is now you have to influence citations, right? That's a PR. If you have PR and comms department, well, how do you know which sites are having an influence? Well, we can tell you that. This is actually just right out. This is just actually you go to Claude, you hook up Conductor, and then you say, generate me this report. It takes literally probably about 60 seconds to do this. And you can see you have different types of strategies to go after this. By the way, while you're working on making content faster, this actually is stuff you can do now. And a lot of this stuff is pretty gray. You can throw money at some of these problems here, right? You can throw money at them, right? Like content, there's partnerships, there's influence, there's relationships. A lot of these guys that show up here are realizing that AI is eating up their traffic. So a lot of review sites and these middle sort of like kind of middleman sites of sorts, influence sites, they're getting crushed because no one's coming to their websites to get educational information. But they're realizing that they are influencers. So you guys can go to them and actually make relationships here. And again, these are the work streams, right? Like, so these are the work streams that have to go into this. And again, we all have something different. So if you have a social strategy, which I know the company obviously has a social strategy, we can not just tell you that Reddit is having an influence, but we can tell you which are the specific pages that they are having an influence. Or what are the kind of YouTube creators that are actually having an impact. If you're going to have an influencer program, let's think about the YouTube creators that are already in the mix and are serving in your team. And looking at this data, it changes. So this is actually allconnect.com. Does anyone know them? AllConnect. Well, they say again. Yeah. So they weren't showing up. Are they? What box are they? Are they competitive? Or are they're partner? Yeah, partner. Yeah. So Red Ventures partner. So like they used to not show up at all as a citation, but now they're climbing. So if they're an affiliate and a partner, dial that thing up. Like let's figure out how you can have influence on that because they're really making a difference, right? It's kind of like it's a newish version of paid media in a sense. You can't just buy AI responses, but you can do things to really influence them. And again, you can use your leverage and your dollars to do that. So all of this is really everyone's job. Has anyone heard anything so far that would say, what, I got anything to do with this? No hands going up. So everyone has an influence here, and on top of this, there's not just about influencing those work streams, but it's also about using this data to get interesting information. Like so, for example, sentiment. AI is a great source of sentiment. Why are people in the last month having a negative sentiment about this product and this market compared to 3 months ago? We can tell you that. And we can tell you not just what that sentiment is, but we can tell you, one, what content pieces are influencing it, so you can act on that. But you also might find that there's some problems with the company. Right? Like maybe customer service isn't reacting fast enough, or maybe there's something in the product or something's not clear. I do this for Conductor. We have outstanding sentiment, but it's not perfect. And one of the things that was really negative was that people were very confused and felt like our pricing wasn't transparent. And what we did was actually, and I share this with my board every month, and I share like our sentiment. What we actually went and did was we put out a pricing page on our website. We didn't actually have one before, and we broke it all down, and we made it more transparent and more clear. And now we actually have a project this quarter, which is around like really simplifying our process. Now that's not actually doing like AI search, but that's a better, faster way to listen to customers. If you're waiting for surveys and like other kinds of signals, that takes a long time. AI search has this data, and again, I think I think we can work with Warren on this, but we really need to get the Conductor data inside of your ChatGPT and Claude or Copilot instances, so anybody here can just ask a question and say. And this is, by the way, this is like a brand new thing that we've launched, so it's not like you should have had it 6 months ago, but anybody can ask questions here and just get this kind of insight. It's so powerful and it's so easy. You really have like the voice of the customer and your brand at access to. So it's a real team effort. Everyone has to work together. If you find yourself like in the old world of SEO, you maybe have you have SEO team, you have Alfred, and working somewhere, and like everyone's like SEO is getting done over there. This is not like that. This cannot happen. It's touching every part of the business, and this is really your work streams. And this is like I think this is something I've been really harping on, because I've been meeting with a lot of companies, and I realize like they're not making the kind of progress they want to make. You've got leadership, this is #1 priority. But then when you get down into the details, stuff's not moving at the pace that it is. So this is really the metrics that really matter, which is about how much activities are happening. And I know to the extent that I can have an influence here at the company, it's going to be really focusing on this, which is having a weekly and a monthly dashboard that looks at these 6 things, which is how much content did we improve, how much content did we make, how much content did we refresh, and then down here, which is what did we do in each of these 3 baskets. Now, yes, quality does matter, but activity will lead to better quality, right? And better results. So we got to figure out how to get activities around this, and that's ultimately the name of the game. And again, I don't think anyone should look at the company or your team or your process with any kind of judgment. Our processes are the way that they are, and they worked for us to get to this point. But now we need to be a little bit different. We need to adapt, and I think that if anyone can find a way to reduce process to get faster, you should get a Starbucks gift card. For doing that. So this is a loop, and and that's generally that's generally the essence of this of what I wanted to talk about. And I'm here, and I'd love to take some questions. And I don't know if we're gonna orchestrate some questions here, but it's a really exciting time right now to be in this business, and I think that understanding this ecosystem and how all of this works, both from the consumer side, from the AI side, and from the brand, I think it's a really powerful time to have influence, to make change, and I think this is going to be the future of how marketing is done at organizations, because I can't think of anything that's more influential to any one of your customers than using AI to make decisions. That is the future and how customers are going to make decisions. So thank you so much, and glad to take some questions.